Where do you think we are actually seeing meaningful improvements in workforce decisions today with AI implementations?
Our research would say 2/3 of the global workforce aren't ready to use AI in the way that we expect them to. Failure right now with the opportunity that AI is giving organisations isn't low numbers for a year or two. It's the difference between an organisation still existing in 12 months' time or not. People are the key to unlocking technology, I think. Work isn't going away, it's changing.
Welcome to Discover Dialogues podcast, powered by TechDogs. The world of business and technology is evolving at breakneck speed. AI breakthroughs, digital transformation, and game-changing innovations are reshaping industries every day. On this show, we dive into the trends, ideas, and strategies driving the future. We're sitting down with industry leaders, innovators, and disruptors to bring you fresh insights, bold perspectives, and real conversations that matter. So plug in, tune in, and let's discover what's next.
Today on the show, we're joined by Lucy Beaumont, Global SVP Product at SHL, where she leads the company's talent intelligence portfolio across assessment, mobility, and workforce decisioning. With deep experience across occupational psychology, psychometrics, product strategy, and HR tech, Lucy has spent more than a decade building solutions that help organizations make better, faster, and more predictive decisions across the employee lifecycle. In this episode, we explore how talent decisions are being reshaped by AI, skills-based organizations, connected workforce data, and the shift from static HR insights to predictive decision-making, and what it takes for leaders to balance technology, human potential, and business performance. Let's dive in. Another episode of TechDogs Discover Dialogues. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, Lucy, today.
Thank you, Vikram. It's a pleasure to be here.
Lucy, before we kind of start with what's on the agenda, I went through your profile and I thought you had a very interesting background because you've kind of had occupational psychology, you've had product leadership, and then you had like workforce strategy all together. Especially when talent decisions have started becoming more and more data driven. And personally, it's even more fascinating for me because I started my early career with Predictive Index, which is a psychometric assessments tool. And that really shaped me as an individual in really understanding people and, working through them with them. And I'm a PI certified analyst for that matter. So for me, this conversation is very close to my heart also because I'm going to speak to a person who's a psychologist in many ways. But yeah, so I would love to kind of, unpack your professional journey a little. Would love to understand, how did we come about this entire journey? What were the highlights? What were the lowlights? And, what made you go in or take this direction?
Yeah, wow, big questions. And you always feel old when you start looking back on your professional journey and thinking, where did it start and how long ago? But yeah, I mean, I qualified as a psychologist really because I just loved people. I found that so fascinating to sort of study why people react in the way that they do, what changes their motivations, and how can you use that to help people get into the best part of work that they can. How do you develop them in the right way? So I guess I was really drawn to the people side of psychology when I was growing up, and then I guess I started my career using that in terms of, well, how do you design good assessments? And it's very much around precision and how can you really make defensible decisions around people, and got very into sort of the science side of it. And I guess how I've seen my career change, and probably where the industry is moving, is from those siloed, very precise ways of looking at individual things to what we're seeing now is really scalable ways of viewing people. So, I used to be very focused on, well, what does this one assessment tell me? And now it's really about how can I collect lots of data across multiple assessments, multiple signals to make the most informed decisions across an organisation. So I think the industry's changed, and you sort of see that if you look at people's careers, how they've perhaps navigated through that. And I think it's just sort of, for me, it was building that background or foundation as a psychologist, really understanding the depths of what we do, and then getting to a point of, this is really science-led, but our users aren't scientists. people. They're often HR, but actually they're business leaders, they're employees. And so the fascinating part for me in terms of product management and product development has been, how do we start taking that science and not losing it, but thinking about how do we bring that to life to answer real questions? And that, I guess, has sort of guided the things that we've built, the way that we think the world is going. And it's really, fascinating to get into those user personas and think about how we're designing solutions to meet those needs. So at the core of it, the science, the psychology remains really strong. But I think it's the world is just so evolved now. We're not selling to psychologists. We're working with organizations on how they look at their talent, and that just changes, I guess, how I've been looking at product management and product development over the last couple of years.
Looking back in the last decade or so, what do you think what are some of the biggest shifts that you've seen, when it comes to how organizations are looking at talent or thinking about talent?
Been a couple of shifts over the last decade, the most notable being in the last couple of years with AI. But I think some of those earlier shifts were looking at talent probably when you're hiring was the big focus. And most organizations would have really focused most of their efforts there. I think we've definitely seen that shift into really understanding talent within the organization today and how you develop it and how you move it. I think that's been a shift that we've seen over time. I think we've moved from point in time views of talent to more of an always on looking at it. And I think that there is a real impetus from organizations now to grow talent from within, which I don't think we saw. There was a lot of talk a long time ago about employee development and employee mobility, but that hasn't really been actualized until the last couple of years. The big shift now is definitely AI and what that unlocks for us. So, and as I say, I think the real shift is that moving from precision. There was a fight between precision and scale, and now we can do both. We can get really precise insights into talent at scale. And that's sort of the workforce transformation play. How do you start really understanding what your talent looks like? AI is unlocking the ability for us to predict what that might mean and then take actions to help promote the things that you want to be developing in and pull back from the areas that are going to cause you risks. So that's definitely the biggest shift in terms of an outside force. I think where we are is sort of trying to manage it from a change management perspective. That's the challenge now, is like this, the technology is getting ahead of where organizations are. And so we can build great things today, but how do we take employees, managers, HR on the journey to better understand their talent, make better decisions, and actually just change perhaps some of those processes that we've been doing for a really long time.
I mean, looking back at what you just said, I think your journey is almost like a growth and evolution of how the talent and workforce strategies across businesses have evolved over the years. I mean, back in the day, they were a lot intuition driven. Then they moved, I think, a little more towards data, where assessments came along. And then now we're talking tech like AI, which, like you said, allows us the scale and the precision, right? And I think that's what I want to, talk about next. Moving towards, what are the current trends and the challenges that organizations are facing today? I mean, see, when you look at how most organizations make talent decisions today, and it could be across hiring, it could be across development, it could be across mobility. How much of it do you still think is intuition led? And is there any truth when one says that it's actually holding them back from becoming more data driven?
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating. Most organizations would push back on the idea that they're still intuition led. But I think if you look at hiring, there's in most instances, intuition has been taken out of it, largely because not only do we want to hire the best people, and there's a lot of ROI on doing that right, but there's also a lot of governance and legality around making fair, objective decisions. So I think the intuition, the gut feel, the subjective hiring in many instances has been reduced down as far as possible. Obviously, there's still some of that goes in, but a lot of what we try and do with organizations is how do you make better, fairer, objective decisions based on the data that you've got? And I think hiring has gone way ahead of any other talent practices there. I think if you look at leadership decisions, you tend to see in some ways more investment there in making more objective decisions. How can we actually understand what potential looks like, for example, rather than this person's been a very good manager, perhaps they'd be a good leader. There's a lot of science that can go into helping people make that distinction, and more sophisticated organizations definitely do that today. I think if you look at where we've got to in the last couple of years, and I've seen this, one of the things that I came to SHL to do was create this scalable view across the employee population. So if you think about the way most organizations want to bring objectivity, they want to understand their people, they know all of the good reasons for doing that, but it's very, very hard, and it's been very, very expensive to do that, across enterprise organizations. When you're looking at hundreds of thousands of people, how do you even do that? And I think now our opportunity with technology is to be able to do that. We're commoditizing the ability to get good data on our people and then make decisions on it. And I think that will reduce the level of intuition that comes into decision making. Who do you promote within an organization? Where do you move people? All of those types of decisions, if we're honest, have been quite intuition led, quite subjective. And there's so much data around the plethora of reasons why that's not a very good approach. But the ability to actually change that has been very difficult because it's very expensive to do that and it's not easy to do it. I think outside of the technology, I think the really fascinating view at the moment is that there's both a perspective from HR and business to want to get better data on people, but that is very much matched by employees. Employees want to own their own career. They want to own their own development. They want to know, well, where could I move next? So if you match those two things up with an organization wanting to understand where could you develop, where could I move this person, and an employee wanting to do that, you're sort of trying to triangulate the same data. And so, to create an employee value proposition and a HR-led proposition becomes quite easy if you match those two things. So there's a number of different things coming together at the moment that mean we're moving outside of intuition and we can bring more objective data into it. There is a risk at the moment, I would flag, that people are getting more data. Of course, we're getting more data. Companies I talk to will say we've got all the data, like data collection isn't a problem. Putting it together is a problem that we're getting ahead of. I think most organizations are working out how to connect data. But one of the big risks right now is with more data, which data can you trust? And if you're going to make decisions about people, you need to be able to trust that data. And I think a lot of the effort that's gone on in the last 2 years has been, how can I collect workforce data such that I can infer the skills of people and I can understand the gaps that I have in my organization? That's an incredibly rich source of insight, which you can trust for looking across and making some understanding of the data. When you start to make decisions on that, you need to bolster that with data that you can trust to make a decision on. And I think that distinction is becoming more and more apparent. And I think it's collecting the different types of data together, working out when can I use it just to, get a view across the organization, and when can I use it to make decisions that I can trust. And that's the thing that I think a lot of organizations are grappling with today.
Talking about data, what do you think separates, organizations that are successfully operationalizing that data and against organizations who are just simply collecting it?
The organizations that are winning have a clear data strategy. We talk about a talent strategy. The last couple of years, people have been talking about skills strategies or becoming a skills-based organization. I think the ones that are capitalizing right now have got data strategies. So they're collecting it, they're combining it, they're looking. Possibly the key thing is working out what the questions are that you want to answer, then working back to what data would I need? Do I have it? Do I trust it? And if I don't, then you sort of follow that train back through to start thinking, okay, how do I create a data strategy that ultimately gets me the right data to answer the right questions? Because we definitely see a lot of organizations that have a lot of data and can tell you things,
Right.
that is not answering a question that they care about. And so, that's where sophisticated organizations have worked out what questions they're going to want to answer, and then what their data strategy looks like around that.
Yeah, it does. And I think just kind of, I would like to build on it, right? So see, a lot of data obviously means that you have a lot of information, but at the core, it's all about the decision making that, comes along with, right? Does it allow you to, does it give you actionable insights so that it's not just a dashboard of data that you're seeing, but something that you can, do. And I think the data that's started to come into the play, especially because of AI in the last couple of years, there's almost been that explosion in almost every function across business and HR as well, where businesses are, heavily investing in, tech and people analytics solutions and HR solutions. Okay, but like I said, there's that disconnect between data and how you use it effectively. What role does the leadership play in all of this when it comes to, turning insights into decisions?
Yeah, so really, I think a lot of this is in change management, in how we change the way that we use data to make decisions. I'm seeing HR become really embedded in this process when it's done well. So the decisions that get made aren't or necessarily made within HR. It's a manager making a decision about their people, and in real time, it's an employee trying to understand, is there opportunity for me to grow here, or what should I develop in my career, which HR might not be seeing. It's a leader looking at their organization and saying, well, if these are the skills of the future, if I believe that I need people that can do this, do I have those people, and how can I develop or move people or reskill people, or do I need to bring people in? Those are the key decisions that organizations are making right now. And I think how you do that with data is by really connecting in with HR functions so that you're accessing the right data, but again, sort of saying, where do I get it? But I think from a technology perspective, the thing that will help is, how do we help those end users make decisions in the flow of work? So not having to go outside to HR necessarily. HR want to facilitate this. They want to help put this data into the hands of the right people. So how do we embed that? And then how do we put it into the places that they're accessing it, in real time, so that people aren't thinking, I could go and find that data. I could go and run an audit on my team and understand where the gaps are and the strengths are, but how long is that going to take me, and what's it going to tell me? And versus saying, okay, I've got an always on approach to my data. So I understand my team because we're collecting data all the time. I can go and look at that. I can ask questions of that, and then I can help make an informed decision. Now that becomes a lot less frictionless for our end users, our managers, our leaders, to be able to do that. So I think there's some redesign of how we get data into the hands of these users, as well as the change management. If you've been managing and leading a team for the last 20 years, doing it a certain way, something's got to happen for you to think there's a different way, or I'm going to look at data to do this. We've got to help facilitate that from a change management perspective. And I think across everything, data and technology are the least of our worries. We're getting very sophisticated, and for SHL, we're building out talent intelligence. How do we really get the intelligence there? And I think when we come to implement that with organizations, a lot of our time and focus is thinking, how do we help you use this in a meaningful way, get your people on board, get your leadership understanding the value of this and changing behaviors. That's, I guess, where some of the challenges lie.
And I think those challenges are further just going to amplify, because what we've seen AI is capable of in the last year or two, I think a lot of organizations are under immense pressure to, obviously, on all fronts, to make faster and better decisions, and workforce decisions is just one of them, right? And we did a HR roundtable, I think last month, and this was one of the conversations that we had as well, where we talked about how AI in HR and HR sub functions and talent sub-functions has become one of the biggest conversations, apart from marketing and software development. But there is still that uncertainty, when it comes to, is it creating genuine value versus where the hype is and maybe what the reality will look like. Obviously, you've had that vantage point, so where do you think we are actually seeing meaningful improvements in workforce decisions today with AI implementations?
There's definitely, I mean, all the research would say there's a massive gap between investment in AI and return on investment. I definitely think that any move towards an AI transformation, investment in AI, which every organization that we're working with is on that journey. I think it is your CHRO and your CTO coming together very closely here, because we all know, I mean, there's so many examples in the world where we've invested heavily in a technology, but people haven't been equipped to use it. They haven't understood it. There's not that change management. We do some research, both leadership level, but also at an employee level, to look at how ready are people to use AI. And our research would say 2/3 of the global workforce aren't ready to use AI in the way that we expect them to. And that is just, not looking at specific technical people or, people building AI. That is in every part of the workforce. And that's looking at, those human sides of people that are going to want to make them use it, that are going to allow them to understand it, to embed it, to mentor, all of those types of things. There's a huge gap. And if you don't address that, and we're seeing this, you're investing so heavily, not just the monetary investment, but that's the strategic bets that you're making, that your organization's going to become AI ready. And if your people aren't on that journey, you're going to fail. So I think the first part is, understand where are your workforce, like what parts of the population are ready, where do you have the gaps, what do the gaps look like, and then try and put in those plans to elevate them, because I think that's where we see it fail. And failure right now with the opportunity that AI is giving organizations isn't, low numbers for a year or two. It's the difference between an organization still existing in 12 months' time or not. So getting the human, the people, the talent ready is critical. And we do see that as a gap. And I think HR are beating that drum. And I love the fact that that was one of the things that you'd identified in the round table. We definitely see that. I think where HR aren't at the board, aren't at the most senior decision-making tables in the room, the organizations don't get it right because they're not understanding their people. And people are the key to unlocking technology, I think.
Obviously, there's a lot of talk about AI in talent recruitment. And then I think perhaps that's a lot what people talk about, right? But are there any other talent functions that you feel that AI is actually improving, or is making more efficient? It's making that function more efficient?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's obviously a lot of focus on how and when and what's the right ways of embedding AI into talent acquisition, recruitment, those activities. I think, as I say, the focus is definitely, from my perspective, would be on using AI to help you understand talent across the workforce. So, we specialize in assessment and the objective side of that. And there's AI that comes into some of those processes. But I think there's an opportunity to embed AI inferred technology to understand the workforce at scale. And then how do you overlay that with the more objective pieces so you can understand what that looks like and then make decisions. I think when we come to look at internal mobility, if you think about AI as being able to understand, how can you look at your job architecture? How can you look at your talent today? And the key is the jobs that you need are changing so quickly right now because of AI in many instances. But, whether a job title is changing or not, what happens in that job is changing. How do you keep track of that across all of the jobs in the organization today at scale and understand, what does good look like in that job? What does success look like? And keep up to date with that such that you can keep your people aligned to that, whether that's upskilling, reskilling them to do that. So AI is helping us understand how skills are changing in jobs, how tasks are changing, and therefore how we need to upskill and reskill our people. It's helping us look at where are the biggest gaps in the organization and where does it match across. So, we work with organizations that might be looking at, do you know what, we're going to automate a lot of our customer service functions, but cybersecurity is becoming a super big risk for us. Well, what does the talent, the skills profile look like between those two different types of work? And do our people that are currently doing customer service today have a pathway to become cybersecurity experts if we upskill and reskill them into that? So by able to sort of see where these different skill needs are at scale, understand your talent, and then plot, well, what are the development gaps? How would we reskill to get them there? Is a really effective strategy in talent management, I guess, workforce planning. And there was some research, I think it was Gartner research, that was saying 30% of employees that are replaced by AI today will be rehired within the next 2 to 3 to 5 years.
Interesting.
So that's a really expensive mistake to make. And AI can help us not make those mistakes by not these knee-jerk reactions to skills changing and AI coming in, but actually helping us understand what are the human skills that we need within the organization, where would we put them, how do we augment human skills around AI skills, and just make these smarter decisions. I think that's what we're seeing is, that's really, I guess, what talent intelligence is. How do we become a lot more intelligent? AI is helping us across the board there.
And talking about decisions that leaders will have to make, given the fact that we're not doing role-based hiring, we're doing a lot more of skill-based hiring. Obviously, the work models are also changing because of AI-enabled systems. As a leader, what do you think are some of the biggest changes or the most difficult changes that they will have to see through this transition?
I hear there's a lot of, we see customers that are certainly doing that. We also see customers that, there's a lot of organizations that talk about doing some of these things and haven't quite got there. But there's some really key, we did a virtual summit actually this week with some of our, really big global intelligent customers. And one of the points that I took away was this statement that they shared that said, we've always said that past performance is the greatest predictor of future performance. That's pretty much been the mandate in understanding talent.
Right.
As long as I've been around and forever, really. What someone's done before is the greatest predictor of what they can do in the future. Now that has changed because what somebody's going to be able to do in the future is so unknown, and we're really now relying on potential.
Right.
We're trying to understand what can somebody do, not what has somebody done in the past. So when you think about recruiting people in, you're not just looking at, I think organizations are trying to get a view of how do we get people in that can do the job that they're being hired to, but then what would they be asked to do next? So things like reskilling potential become really important, and then I think legalities and guidelines will shift alongside that because we've always been recruiting people against the profile of can you do this job?
Right.
And if the idea of a job is changing, some of those fundamentals are going to change as well. But there's just huge shifts, I think, in what we're looking at. We're seeing organizations, particularly in grad hiring and early careers, that are saying, don't apply to a job or a grad scheme today, apply to the organization. And we're looking for a certain set of people, and then we will work out which schemes you go on or which jobs we put you into. But we're less focused on finding people for specific areas. We're more focused on finding the right type of people that we know we can grow and develop and will evolve as our business changes.
Now, I can imagine, I think there's going to be a lot of cultural change that's going to come along or is going to be required as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's, change is constant. I think there's an expectation, I believe, that every organization should and will be constantly reskilling and upskilling people now. We can't hire talent fast enough to, upskill by the time that you need it and so on. And it's just, it's an unsustainable way of doing it. But to be thinking if our tasks and skills and jobs are going to be changing quite quickly, how do we upskill and reskill our people quite quickly at the same time? And I think that's a cultural change, both from a HR and organisational perspective, but also from an employee perspective of, I'm going to be asked to be upskilled and reskilled. I'm going to have to be constantly learning new things. And the fascinating point there, I guess, is that's a human nature. That's a desire. Most people want to learn and grow. That's a natural sort of piece. So how do you get people's natural motivations to want to learn and grow and develop, and focus them into the things that the organisation wants them to learn and grow and develop onto? How do you create people's career paths and help them see that, wow, if I learn these things, I can go there, like there's something in it for me. So I don't think we're fighting motivation from a reskilling perspective, but I think culturally, many people have sat in jobs for many years and nothing's really changed, or I haven't had to learn new things. And I think there's not going to be many jobs that don't, have to change what they're doing and have to get upskilled and reskilled. So that will be a big shift. But there's a lot of shifts coming, I think, from a cultural perspective. Leadership would be another,
Absolutely. I'm sure as leaders, they'd be expected to demonstrate certain different types of behaviors now, as against what they've been used to.
It's so fascinating because, again, as a psychologist, we haven't seen leadership change for, the last 50 years. Like, what makes a good leader broadly has always made a good leader.
Absolutely.
We've always at SHL looked at the context in which the leader operates might mean that some leaders are successful in one environment versus another. So we sort of apply context to how leadership changes. But as a fundamental, there's a set of baseline things that every psychologist would broadly agree on in terms of a leadership model. Our research at SHL has been really focused now on, is that model going to change now? Is it evolving? Because are these behaviours going to be different? And I think one of the key signals we're seeing is the transactional aspects of leadership are the types of things that AI can do a lot more easily. The transformational, the strategic, the human, networking side of leadership is going to become much more poignant. And they've always been good drivers of success, but that's going to be really, really key as we go forward. And, some of the research we're looking at, the model will look at things like applying a leader's wisdom to AI, because it's that's like a key skill, isn't it? So if you're a leader, you've got so much experience, you've got so much understanding of, decision making. And if you're thinking about how you use AI, one of the key things is going to be, well, how do you question it? How do you understand it? How do you bring your own wisdom such that you're not just taking what it says or, working with it in a way that takes away your judgment? So yeah, I think there's a broad shift away from the transactional towards those transformational networking skills, but also some of these key behaviours that we haven't really seen before. One of the key things, and again, this came up at the virtual summit from our customers, was those leaders that model and use AI are much more likely to have teams that use and model and use AI. So leadership behaviour, even in signalling that AI is going to become part of our future and people need to get on board, is again one of the greatest ways that we see adoption within the wider employee population.
Obviously, you operate at that intersection of people, data, business strategy, and I'm sure you're always having this conversation. I mean, within SHL and obviously within your clients as well, where you're trying to say, these are the things that you need to do to stay relevant. Especially, again, we're talking about leadership, so we'll probably focus on those individuals. What skills or capabilities do you think, they should be focusing on to stay relevant?
I mean, I would say every individual in the world probably needs to be focusing on AI and what that means for them, their job, their team, their industry. I think, there's nowhere that's not going to be impacted. So I think that's going to look different for everybody, but a leader that's understanding what that landscape means for them, their function, the people that work within that's going to keep them relevant. And that isn't just, AI literacy. That's looking at what shifts is it going to mean? How do I redesign work with AI now? So I think leadership is going to have to think about some of those things. But I think I would say if there's anything that I would say to organizations we work with in terms of leadership is it's a really scary time for employees. Strategies are changing, what's being asked of people is changing. A lot of people are very nervous right now. And so I think as leaders, the key behaviors that I'd be honing in on is how do you understand and connect with your people? And that's something that AI, can't do in the way that humans do. And so I'd be saying to leaders, that isn't a new thing that we'd be asking them to do. But if you want to stay relevant, don't use AI as a mask that blocks you further away from the people within your organization. Actually get closer to the people within your organization, understand how you can help them navigate this change, how you can help them make it relevant for them. I think that is one of the key things that leaders and managers can do today is lean into those human skills, the empathy, the listening, the understanding. I think that's critical.
I think it's been just about 10 years or a decade, a little more than a decade actually, where we had to go through a similar transition. AI is not only changing, what customers are expecting out of you, the interactions, the services that you're providing, but the business itself is also trying to reinvent itself. How you could deliver them better, right? And this is across ops, it's across finance, it's across HR, it's across sales, it's across marketing. It reminds me almost of when we went through the internet and the web era, where everything just moved online, and then we had to redesign everything everything came along with it, right? So you got the whole cloud computing aspect. Services became more online, the way you function changed, communication changed, and I think AI, in my opinion, is going to have a far more reaching effect. And I'm so glad you mentioned the whole Gartner study, because I think you referenced in the context that 30% of the workforce that's going to be let go of now, or is just going to come back into, with maybe different skill sets or, different roles. But I think that's a good positive spin to a lot of AI, quote unquote, fear mongering, or could be the fact in many ways that's actually happening at the moment.
There's a lot of panic over AI and what it will mean to jobs. Everything that I see signals, if you look at World Economics Forum, I think the highlight would be work isn't going away, it's changing. And that's why I think reskilling and upskilling is going to become really important. So jobs aren't going to go away. I don't think we need less people. We need different skills in different types of roles. And there's a lot of change that's going to happen to understand what that looks like, to help people get there and so on. But yeah, I think that's the positive message that I'd definitely be thinking. And when we talk about relevance, both as leaders, as managers, as employees, it's thinking, trying to really think, what will my job look like in the future? What will this team look like in the future? And then how do we get on board with it? Because I think the pressure from the business to take advantage of some of these, the opportunity with AI, that pressure I think is crippling. The leaders that I speak to today that are feeling the pressure from putting AI in and seeing these ROIs come out is just getting so strong right now that they're really, really struggling, and it's almost inertia now to do anything. And I think the simple strip back of that is thinking, well, how do we augment AI into the workforce? How do we redesign around it? But importantly, what does that look like for our people? Because the headlines will tell you this company's got rid of these functions and these people are gone and all of that. Yeah, and the reality is, I read something recently, I think it was like 1%, 3% of organizations are actually seeing people being made redundant as a result of AI. That gets you the headline, but in terms of what the opportunity looks like, and again, I think that's why you see a knee-jerk reaction to, wow, do I need people doing this job? I must let them go, versus what I think of as talent intelligence of understanding, okay, if I don't need people doing that, or if that role is changing, where do I shift them? Because it's so expensive to, be hiring new people into these things rather than training from within. So yeah, it's It feels scary. I think it feels overwhelming, but there's definitely a way to sort of, create a structure around this and to think about ways to get you there.
And Lucy, looking back at your journey, is there a piece of advice that you'd probably share with professionals, who want to grow, into leadership roles today?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't think I'm ever in a place to give advice to people, so I don't know if I'd be very good. I guess the thing that I struggle with and try to do better at is trying to understand what matters and what doesn't matter, and putting your time into what matters. There's a lot of things that feel urgent, feel big, and if you can step back from them, you'll sort of realize that wasn't the thing that I should have been focusing on. It was something else. And I think I'm definitely trying to train myself. I'm on the journey of trying to learn how do you get better at recognizing what matters. And often, the things that don't matter or you need to deprioritize, they do matter to somebody else. So you've got to manage that. But, if you're trying to grow your career towards leadership, I think it is trying to understand and help others understand what matters and what doesn't matter and where to focus time and attention and energy.
I think that's something that I learned way late in my career as well. If I have it right, it's the Eisenhower matrix, right? Where you're talking about urgent versus important. And I kind of echo this across my team all the time. They have to start prioritizing tasks. Looking back at my career as well, I believe that I think as an individual also, if you're able to do it, it just allows you to do a lot more. And this can be in your personal space for that part. It doesn't need to be just in your professional space. I think if you're able to figure out what's important and what's urgent and park the other things for later, I think it just helps, declutter your mind a lot and allows you more focus. But great. So, we're almost towards the end of the show. On that great note, what I would love to do is that, would love to kind of quickly move into our rapid fire round. We'd love to get to know the Lucy behind the title and probably understand what her quirks are. So coming up next is our rapid fire round. I want quick questions, instinctive answers. You can explain them if you want to, but quick ones. Let me know when you're ready and we'll go for it. Tea first or straight into the day?
Oh, tea first. Who doesn't have a tea first?
All right. So what's the most British thing about you?
Well, I love a good queue. If I see a line, I'm joining it.
Sunday roast or takeaway night?
Oh, takeaway. That's very un-British of me. I'm not a big Sunday roast fan.
What's your go-to comfort TV show after a long week?
Oh, I don't know. Last night I was running and watching Gogglebox. That's a terrible answer. I don't know. Depends what.
We could do it the other way around. What's your favorite TV show ever?
Well, that's the same question. I don't know.
Well, what's your favorite TV show ever?
Breaking Bad. Can I ask? Obvious.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. If you could spend a day anywhere in the UK, where would you go?
At home. I love being at home.
What's that one thing that you always pack for work travel?
My running trainers.
Okay.
They've travelled a lot. They haven't necessarily run everywhere they've been, but they've travelled a lot.
Are you someone who enjoys quiet countryside escape or a busy city weekend?
Countryside. I live in the Cotswolds. If I see a bus, I get scared. No, I like to be in the countryside.
As British it can be, what's your ideal rainy day plan?
My ideal
rainy day plan
would be, I would still go for a dog walk in the rain and I'd enjoy it. But it would be a film with the kids, popcorn, lights off. Cuddled up on the sofas.
What's that one thing outside of work that instantly puts you in a good mood?
Running or a dog walk. Someone
visited the UK for the first time. What's that one thing you'd insist that they experience?
I would say get outside of London. Go to Wales, go to the Gower, go to Scotland. The Cotswolds are lovely. Yeah, I would say go out to the countryside.
If your colleagues saw your music playlist, what might surprise them?
I don't know if they'd be surprised because they probably understand that I'm a bit of a loser anyway. I don't know if they'd be surprised. I went to see Olivia Dean last weekend in Copenhagen, so I was feeling quite cool about that. But it's probably like kids' songs would be featuring heavily. There's a lot of K-pop Demon Hunter that they'd see on my Spotify.
So, Lucy, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate this. I think your insights on talent intelligence, the whole skill-based organizations, and the AI-driven precision scale that organizations need to look forward to. Have given us a kind of a balanced view of where the future of work is heading. We thank you for that, and it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show today once again. Any parting thoughts?
No, it's been great. I mean, I love talking about this stuff. So thank you for the opportunity. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, or your favorite podcast app. Catch past episodes and more at techdogs.com. See you next time.